Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of The Curse, episode 6, The Fire Burns On. Now, this is the shortest episode of the season at 38 minutes, and for me, I felt like that actually made it better paced. Where the one thing about the show that's really been tough for, I think, a lot of viewers is how slow and drawn out some of these scenes are in the pace, where this felt like an episode to me that should have been the length of all the episodes because I feel like it just gets it moving just a little quicker. So it still is just as effective, and I think actually even more effective in that regard. But we finally get to see the first cut of Flipanthropy, and it's really great how the couple from the last episode is actually perfect for the part that they were looking for, and it's funny when you're watching it that they're not actually buying this home. Also, too, on first watch, I did not notice in that scene that Asher's cell phone was in his hand when he grabbed the pottery. And you see the show becomes more and more lifeless as the cut goes on, and their eco-friendly paint is covering graffiti, and they're invited over to dinner by one of the families. It just gets very, very stale, like you're literally watching paint dry. And Whitney will say to Dougie that it feels lifeless. And Dougie gets a kick out of this because Whitney has been the one in command of the direction the show's going. She's making the calls like, let's keep it moral here. She doesn't want to have anything that rocks the boat, which Dougie have always been saying is just very boring. She's been the one kind of pushing away the drama. But now she's caving for Dougie's help. And he's like, if you want my opinion, you got to say my name 3 times like Beetlejuice. So this isn't a coincidence that he says Beetlejuice here. He is like this demon or this evil genie in a sense that he's going to give her a wish and make this a good show now. But it's going to be at the expense of Asher and probably her marriage. And what makes this so convincing that Whitney would do this is it was perfectly timed they would do it in this episode because last episode she was hitting that breaking point with Asher, and especially towards the end of the episode where she basically was numb around him. Like I said, she was like a zombie. So it makes sense that she'd be willing to throw him under the bus now to make the show better. And it makes perfect sense what Dougie's doing because Dougie, we know, bullied Asher when they were growing up. So he is totally okay with making Asher look like an idiot on TV. He's wanted this to happen, and he also has a thing for Whitney. We know this too. So that is something he's totally signed up for, is just separate them as much as possible. Remember, he was trying to make a fake dating profile for him as a joke for Whitney to see. So you know that he's got ulterior motives as well. But really great writing in the scene. I absolutely love this scene, especially when Dougie's like, there's no conflict, there's no drama. You can't talk about the racial tensions or the crime. What's left is you and Asher. So that's giving her that choice. That's the route for her to go that she will choose and makes more sense for her than giving up her moral ground and keeping her clean image. And he's saying the perfect things. Like, he's like, I know you have a vision you want the world to see spread, but people need to watch the show for that to happen. And he's like, selling a BS version of yourself isn't going to go anywhere. He even calls her out and says she's a woman with something to hide, really getting at it for almost like a therapy session, talking about her parents. And he says if we include these moments of frustration with Asher, then people are going to connect with you. If they believe you are telling the truth, then they will think you have no reason to hide anything. So he's really giving such a convincing argument on why she should throw Asher under the bus. And she's just concerned. She's like, but then Asher would be talking about me too, right? And Dougie gives the ace answer here where he's like, the show is through your eyes. Remember the focus group said, why is she with that guy? And he says, we'll just encourage him to be himself, won't tell him anything else. And Whitney gives the biggest smile to this. This is such a huge turning point in the show at that moment. And Whit even suggests a new name for the show now, the Green Queen. So she's starting to make it more and more about her than what she originally set out to be about this community. And Dougie loves it. I don't think he really loves that name, but I think he loves getting into Whitney's good graces and will do what he can to eventually get with her. And I love the line, well, if you're the queen, what does that make Asher? And she's like, the king? And he says, nah, the village idiot. And she laughs at this. So you really start to feel a little more for Asher here. And it really sums up perfectly his character in the show, that he is the village idiot in this show. And you see that throughout the show and his choices he makes and just being unaware of so much. And I love how they convincingly showed when he recut the scene to her, showing her reaction to him with the cell phone and how he made a silly humor moment out of it that would be way more entertaining. And he's really doing a good job of pulling that out of Whitney, because Whitney knows Asher has been holding her back in the talent department of hosting, because that's why she suggested him to go do a class on being funny. Now, Whitney brings up how he was hitting off with Kara, and he's like, well, she smokes. I'm not going to waste my time with someone who's gonna ... So, you know what he's talking about with Di, like his ex-wife. So, very dark, awkward Dougie moment again, like he always has one an episode. And this is setting up the big scene later where Whitney texts Kara, because Whitney, to me, is getting this jealous thing about their bond between Dougie and Kara, that she would then ask Dougie later on what him and Kara actually text about, and he shows his phone and shows an image she sent him of a racist statue. He's like, it's funny, but it's really racist. So they do have conversations like this, and then Whitney will text Kara, who was just hysterical, was not giving her interested answers at all in the conversation they were having. But she says, did Dougie tell you about his burn victim dating show? To me, she was marking her territory on Dougie to Kara, like, hey, you know what? I have these type of conversations with Dougie too, and I know something about him you don't know. And she hesitated to me writing, it's hilarious, LOL, because that is her selling her soul a bit, because she doesn't actually think that something like that is hilarious. It goes against what she stands for, but she's still going to say that to get the point across to Kara. It's a very immature type of high school behavior by Whitney, and how she has to show that to Kara, that like, yeah, I'm there with Dougie too. Now, we'll see a scene in the beginning of the episode where Asher is in the hardware store and Bill from the casino is ignoring him. Now, they didn't end on bad terms per se. There was a very awkward moment of him pouring Gatorade on his head, but he didn't end the scene Bill pissed at Asher. So it makes me wonder that there's something they're alluding to and hinting at now, that maybe that reporter contacted the casino, and maybe she's following up on the information that Asher has given her, and that Bill put the dots together that Asher sold them out. But I love in this moment of Asher's concern about Bill ignoring him when he's at the register, that he still is able to say, these are 2 for 1. Like, those are the best moments that Nathan does as Asher, that those big things he's worried about and thinking about, he still is got those little things he'll never forget. Like when he was looking for Nala and he was more worried about getting his refund for the missing chicken in the penne. Now you'll see this other episode they're filming is they're adding passive energy to the Espanola fire station. And you now see Dougie's directing is unleashed. She's been given the go ahead by Whitney. He's telling Whitney to be extra smiley when she's talking to the firemen. And he's like, I'm going to have the camera right on Asher during this. And they're laughing about it. And then he pulls the fireman aside and tells him to flirt with Whitney. And then later in the episode, he is going to want to have the fireman tell the other fireman to go into the weight room with Whitney with his shirt off. So he's literally taking every opportunity to add this drama now to make Asher look like an idiot, and also to have any chance to separate Asher and Whitney, because he wants Whitney. And I think they set up where Dougie had apologized for bullying Asher in that episode, but we've seen Dougie's tried to hang out with Asher, and he's blown him off every time, and we saw Dougie crying. So I also think there's a part of him that's justifying what he's doing too, that like, you know, well, screw this guy. He doesn't actually see me as anything. And what's interesting is there's a moment where Asher's telling Whitney how Bill was ignoring him, but she gets a credit card charge from the jeans store, so there's more theft going on. She's going to get charged a lot now, and Kara is still not signing his release form, so like I said in the last episode, she's never going to sign that release form. So they're going to have so many blurry images around their show. It's going to look terrible if they don't get that approved for the art. Now, we get another shot in this show where we open with Asher's cherry tomato, and he finds chicken on the sink. So the cursed paranoia is ramped up again. I'd love everyone's theories about where that chicken actually came from. But he confronts Dougie, who denies it. And Dougie's definitely telling the truth, because he denies it to Whitney too, where Asher's not around. I also love that Whitney throughout this show, by the way, keeps asking for water and no one ever gets it for her. And the guy's reaction, his face to it was hysterical this episode. And you see when the fireman flirts with Whitney, that was Dougie's plan. Asher is obviously thinking about the chicken instead. He's actually completely oblivious to the flirting happening. And that's why Dougie's like, oh yeah, I don't even think he's paying attention, but it still works. And I loved in that moment the shot of Nathan Fielder getting himself, because he's directing this episode, of him distorted. I thought that was great. Just, again, showing how cursed this guy really is. And you'll see Asher then will investigate the security footage. He's going to not stop it now about finding out where this chicken came from. But before we get to more with Asher, I do want to bring up this scene where they are filming Whitney talking to the fireman about the baby box, and she has No bubbly reaction like she usually does, because this is still a sensitive spot with her because of all the issues she's had with having a child. So this is something she is clearly still thinking about, another aspect to this show, another layer. And I also want to talk about this scene that was the hardest scene in the show to watch by far, was the chiropractor scene with Abshir. Now this is the chiropractor that Whitney got for Abshir and to help his neck pain. And the chiropractor does not stop when he asks him to stop. Doesn't check if he's okay. He's just going with he knows and what he wants to do. Really hard to see. I don't think he's dead. I think a lot of times when you go on Reddit and these types of shows, you'll see people say, like, did he die? Or you'll see people even predicting that Asher's going to kill people in future episodes. I've learned from watching shows like this and reviewing them that it's usually not those extreme things that happen in shows like this. Like, you got to kind of just take a step back and realize that would be such a bomb for a show that you're like, how would that actually fit with what would go after? So I don't think any of those things are actually happening here or will happen, but just my 2 cents on it. But this final scene is Asher. He's with Nala, and he's like, so he's still doing those tiny curses. So he's totally not listening to what her Abshir told him to stop bringing up curses to his daughter. And then he asks her about the chicken, and then he goes and tests her on her psychic abilities. She's getting all the answers correct with how many nails under that bucket. So then where he really had to push it was he got all these nails, but he doesn't realize that he's causing himself to bleed. So this is going to distract Nala from answering how many nails are under the bucket. And she says, I'm sorry. But to me, she was genuinely sorry about what happened to him. Not in the sense of she caused it, because that's why he's like, for what? Checking if she did do something. But she's like, I don't know. I think she just feels for him there in that moment. Now, can Asher sense that? Probably not. He is the village idiot, so we'll see how far he takes. This is going to be problematic, though, especially with Abshir and him getting her riled up about curses again and believing in them. So it's an interesting way to end the episode, and I think this episode had the most momentum of the story and character choices changing now, and that's what I've been waiting for the show. I think this was the most effective pace in the show, and I like the shorter runtime, because if that's the way they're going to get the pace moving a little quicker, I think it worked perfectly here, and everything was moving the plot forward. Where I just feel like sometimes with Benny Safdie, he likes to stretch scenes really, really long, like the date scene, or when he was out with the cars in the desert looking for the keys. So I think this was just much better paced. I'm going to give this one an 8.8 for that reason, because a lot of the stuff's been working with really good script, amazing acting the whole season. So this just took it to another level for me. So I'm excited, and I hope they kind of keep a good, better pace up for the rest of the season. I'm excited they're leaning into the mystery more and more, and we're seeing what's going to happen now with Whitney and Dougie now kind of fully unleashed together, and how that will affect Asher as well, and how this is going to affect Abshir and Nala, and how everyone and this show is going to change, especially if they change the name of it to the Green Queen. So we'll see. But let me know your theories, your thoughts. I love to hear your comments. I read every comment. I try to respond as many as I can. Please subscribe. It helps in so many ways you have no idea. And I'll see you next time.